Hey everyone, Charlie here. Welcome back to One Cup of Japan. This is a show where we have a conversation over something good that Suzu. This morning we are drinking Boss Coffee. Maybe you know Boss Coffee from their, I don't know if famous is the right word, but in my mind they're famous. Commercials featuring American actor Tommy Lee Jones, who is an alien in those commercials, an alien in a foreign land, not so subtle at all. But in the story world of those commercials, he's literally an alien, not just a foreigner. So I don't know, take from that what you will. I'm sure you can tell from the sound right now, but it is a little bit windy today. The weather's trying to decide what it wants to be when it grows up. The blue sky, there's blue skies, but it's like kind of passing showers, and it gets windy and it gets really calm, and you know, all that kind of jazz. So we're gonna deal with it as we go here. Biggest thing to talk about this morning is stupidity in the time of COVID. Now I debated with myself a little bit about how much I wanted to talk about this, or rather how much I had the right to talk about this, considering that I'm an American, and at the very least when it comes to COVID, we seem to be among the stupidest people in the world. But anyway, that said, we're still going to talk about it. And also, just so you know, the goal of this particular walk, besides to, you know, make a video and show you Japan and all that stuff, the usual junk, is to actually find some, oh my god, some beautiful autumn leaves. And I was planning to take you to a shrine that we've been to many times here on One Cup of Japan. And actually there's a really short, documentary is not quite the right word, but a little bit more of like a, you know, well edited, like pretty kind of video on the channel that shows off this shrine because I thought it would look especially beautiful during this autumn season. But now I'm going to show you what has happened to it. Look. Why? Why? I mean, presumably the answer is something like, right, there's construction equipment around, there's an outhouse and all that kind of thing. So presumably they're going to be doing some kind of, right, like refurb or something to that effect. But Jesus, look at it. Every single tree has been completely demolished. It's completely been cut down and removed, and I don't know. This is the only thing that's posted. Kozichu Nitsuki. Shinyu Kinshi. It's basically it's under construction, and it's forbidden for you to enter. Well, I hope it's just for like refurbishment, and some plant life will be given a chance to regrow on the hill. But Jesus, man, I feel really shitty right now. The unfortunate feeling that I have right now is that actually I've been seeing a lot of, not a lot, but you do see some articles about how shrines in that case, and also temples, Buddhist temples, are kind of struggling to make the money they need to keep open. So I hope it's not the case that, for example, that shrine has been shuttered, if that's the thing that you say about shrines, and then it's been purchased for some kind of development, because man, just need more of these ugly buildings, like, honestly. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. Don't worry, there was a second stop on our autumn leaf tour. We're heading there now. So yeah, stupidity in the time of COVID, right? Like, Well, I'm sure maybe if you there's no need to preface this. There is in Japan there are a couple of programs called there's one called Go to Travel, and there's another called Go to Eat. And basically, the way these programs work is that in the case of Go to Travel, if you go to travel, as the name implies, then the government will subsidize 35% of your bill, so long as the place falls under Go to Travel coverage, basically. Yeah, see, there's, you can see actually the entrance down there to the shrine that we just saw. You cross over here, you can see the stone torii. Can I go see the sign, guys? Is it okay? I want to see what's going on. And these programs are it's no more complicated than that. Basically, you go. So, for example, if you would have paid 10,000 yen for a night at a hotel, oh man, what a bummer to see. 10,000 yen for a night at a hotel. With the at the time you pay, the discount is automatically deducted, so you will pay 6,500 yen, and that the remainder, that 3,500 yen, will be paid by the government directly to the establishment, to the hotel, to the ryokan, whatever the case may be. All right. Looks like the construction has been going on from August to, it started in August, but we came here on a video in August and there wasn't anything like this, I think, but the sign was up, now that I think about it, but I don't remember them being like, yeah, we're just gonna tear every single thing out. But now that I think about it, it's not like this place is gonna be destroyed, because this is actually a nationally designated like cultural landmark. But even so, if they're just doing refurb, like, why do they have to destroy all the plant life? Well, the reason why it's a national landmark is because it's one of the largest kabuto-shaped burial grounds in the country, apparently. One that's still intact. The kabuto being that shape that the shrine rests upon. All of that underneath it is a burial ground, a burial mound, And anyway. So hopefully all will be okay. I'm just a little bit shocked to see how much of just destruction's been wrought on it, but anyway, so back to the Go to Travel. So anyway, again, just to clarify, 35% of your travel bill up to will be paid for by the government. And of course, the idea here is to sort of put some money into some hurting tourist places and prop up the economy and all that jazz. The other program I mentioned is Go to Eat. Go to Eat is very, very simple as well. For example, I think it's Family Mart that sells the tickets. You go to Family Mart or you reserve them online. And for example, if you buy 10,000 yen worth of Go to Eat tickets, then you will receive a value equal to, let's say this again. So if you spend $10,000, 10,000 yen on these Go to Travel tickets, Go to Eat tickets, then you receive 12,500 yen worth of tickets back. And basically, you use these like vouchers or gift cards, that kind of thing, when you go to places that honor the program. Basically, when you go to places that have usually like a flag outside that says Go to Eat in yellow. We'll probably see one when we go up here, actually. And you can use them in place of cash. Not everywhere, but even, for example, it's mostly like chain stores like Kokoichi or the convenience stores, that kind of thing. I haven't seen too many local shops that are like part of the program, but there are some. And again, the idea here is just to kind of spur life into the economy and help prop it up during this, during what all is happening with COVID-19. And you can understand why you would want to do something like this, right? Like, it makes sense to want to prop up the economy, to encourage people to spend money so that along with people getting sick, people aren't also becoming destitute, you know? I get that. But there's a couple of issues, right? For when it comes to let's see, which do we want to tackle first? The easiest or the more complicated? Let's talk about, I suppose, go to eat first. Go to eat, as I said, can put money into companies. That means people still have jobs, which you can see, that's the yellow sign up there, that's the go to eat sign. Right? And it props up restaurants and makes sure employees keep getting paid and all that kind of stuff. On the face, it's good. But the trouble is that means people are more likely to gather, right? If a restaurant is part of this campaign, and you can eat there more cheaply, right? Like, especially like a yakiniku shop, like they're already busy, and more you can use the go to eat tickets there. So people are going to jam into these places, potentially, and obviously, right? We've been warned for months about not gathering in groups that are too big, and you know how dangerous that is, and how that's one of the things we want to do to keep the COVID numbers low, is to not go out to eat too much and that kind of thing, right? And here we are. We found some beautiful leaves, and effectively what this campaign is saying is the exact opposite of. I was having a discussion with my partner yesterday about how tomare is usually written in on tomare, by the means fucking stop. How it's usually written, if the to in tomare is written in kanji or katakana, because usually the mare is written in katakana. She said no, it's usually written in kanji. I don't think so, Tim. It was saliva attack. And as I say, this go to eat campaign is basically, why are there so many people here? Is it because it's a holiday? Anyway, let's go around to the more woody area and avoid the shrine, I suppose. Right, so that's the one thing. Now, if we talk about go to travel, on the other hand, right? Again, it's the same ideas to keep these businesses open, especially, I mean, tourist numbers have plummeted, right? Just crazily plummeted, like, for obvious reasons. And go to travel for the same reasons as go to eat is a bad idea, because it encourages people to gather, and it encourages people from places where COVID is a problem to go to places where COVID is not a problem. Right? And so what do I think? I think, for example, that the government should take a case-by-case approach to this, which is something they've been like, oh, we're gonna exclude, for example, Tokyo if Tokyo numbers get too high, or that kind of thing. But they did it after the fact, right? After numbers started surging again, that kind of thing, right? Or now that numbers just generally across the country are increasing, probably as a result of go to travel, go to eat, and also because of the changes in the weather and that kind of thing. Now they're saying, well, we're going to temporarily stop the go to travel campaign and think about if it's actually a good idea. Why didn't you think about it before? Right? And so thinking about it and talking about it a lot, like, right, like, first, I think the better option would have been not to do go to travel in the first place. If you want to support people, if you want to make sure people are still spending money, give them money, right? Just, for example, they had some like rounds of government dispersals that were paid towards the individual, but then also special government, what's the word? Endowment's not quite the word, but basically, what is that word? Rescue package isn't the quite word, but let's go with that for now. Like a rescue package that would give businesses with X amount of employees and blah, 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 like, you know, like 60,000 yen or something to that effect, right? And that's what should have been continued, I think, right? Because then, even if that wasn't enough, right, at least it was not something that was directly going to contribute to the numbers increasing, right? Same thing with the individual. Why in 6-7 months have people only gotten what is effectively $1,000 help from the government, right? When a lot of people are hurting. And so it just seems like another case of the government wanting to be seen doing something while not actually thinking too hard about what they're doing, right? And it's not just a government thing. It certainly is not just a Japan thing, but it feels often like it's particularly a Japan thing in government. I'm not talking about people, but government and business is like, okay, well, let's show them that we're doing something just to be seen as though we're taking it seriously, that kind of thing. Now, I think there is a way in which go to travel and go to eat could have been enacted in a more intelligent way, because again, the idea of wanting to support small business and the individual is not a bad thing, right? To make it easier for individuals to spend money. It's a good idea. Hello, beautiful moss. Right, it's a good thing. The trouble is, of course, for example, in Fukui up until recently, we had like 2 cases in a month. And right, in other places like Tokyo, you had 250 cases a day. Now there's over 500 cases a day. Osaka, close to 500 cases a day. Right, so why in those prefectures would you encourage people, A, to travel around within that prefecture, and B, to gather in those restaurants? Why not just give them money? Like, it's so dumb. Exclude those places. I'm sorry, it's shitty to say, but that's the reality. And then why, for example, right, like check people's IDs, for example. Like if somebody from a high population density area in Osaka has been documented to have trouble with COVID-19, wants to come to a place like Fukui, or wants to go to a place like Ishikawa was a different example, but Toyama, for example, right, and they want to stay there, they show their ID, right, or maybe a lot of places when you do reservations online and that kind of thing, you have to put in your address. If that's shown that they're a resident of Osaka or a resident of parts of Tokyo, like, just refuse the reservation, right? And it's shitty to say, right, because it's not as though it's just people from Fukui, for example, whose tax money is being used to fund these programs, right? People like me, right? It's those people living in Tokyo, those people living in Osaka, and that kind of thing. And of course, what happened a couple months ago when Tokyo was temporarily sort of like taken out of eligibility for using these programs is there was a big uproar, right? Well, why? That's not fair. That's not fair, that kind of thing. But it is, it is fair. At the end of the day, it's like, it's this weird kind of dissonance between generally what is seen as this, right? People tend to think of Japan as like a monolith where everybody thinks about the idea of the greater good, right? And I think generally it is true, where people tend to think a lot more about the greater good, about the group, than in places like the States, for example. Although, what country in the world doesn't think more about it than the States, I wonder. But then in this case, people are not thinking about the group at all. They're not thinking about the greater good at all. They're like, why should I not be allowed to take part in these campaigns? And it's because you're going to make people sick, possibly. And that's just, it's not discrimination. It's statistics. It's science. It's numbers, right? So it's like, it's not a feeling problem. It's like, right, before you even start the campaign, right, set the rule like, okay, if a certain area gets over this percentage of people coming down with COVID, then okay, guess what? sorry, but that's just what the science says. It's not a feeling thing. We're not doing this based on feeling. It's not after the fact, which I think is a lot of people's problems. Like, okay, well, why now are we excluded? Like, they should announce this all at the same time that the campaign starts. It's right, okay, we're gonna do this, but if X, Y, and Z criteria are met, then we're sorry, but you're gonna be excluded from the program. And that way you would still see places supported, right? Maybe not as many, but places would still get some support, both in the travel and in the hospitality industry, and I suppose restaurants covered in the hospitality industry, I don't know, but food service industry would still get some support, right? But you would also, I think, not see the jumps that we're seeing now, for sure. So I just think people could have been a lot more intelligent about things. And yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about that in the words of Forrest Gump. So, and yeah, well, I guess to speak anecdotally, as we look at these beautiful leaves over here. Oh, you hear that swish and crunch of leaf under my feet? What is going on with my mouth? So actually yesterday I took advantage of the GoTo travel campaign here in Fukui. We went camping, just with my family, and we stayed away from people. We're just with ourselves, that kind of thing. And we could do that because Fukui just does not have there are instances in which people have been sick, of course, and recently the numbers have gone up a little bit, but Fukui generally has not had a COVID problem. That's just the way of it. But I will admit that when I got there and I saw license plates from Osaka, license plates from Kyoto, that kind of thing, I was like, hey bug, that's my screen. I was like, a little bit confused by it, And so I thought about it a little bit, and I talked about it a little bit, and I wondered if that was a justified feeling to have, and I think the answer is yes. It's not a situation where you're trying to exclude people based on, well, I don't like him because he's an Osakan, or I don't like him because of X, Y, and Z, right? It's not any sort of, well, let's be honest, right? It's a form of discrimination, but it's based on something, right? It's not just some stupid form of human discrimination based on color of skin or where people are from. It's a matter of safety and wanting not to get sick and that kind of thing. I think, I don't know, tell me if you agree with that. I love this angle. I love the angle. What do you want from me? Right, so, wow, this tree is stunning. Absolutely stunning. Like over here on this tree there are some persimmons, some small kaki, bigger ones up there. It looks like maybe they came out and harvest them. Usually, like a lot of these places, particularly around the shrine that have kaki, they're just sort of like let to fall on the ground and then they rot, and it's disgusting. It smells terrible, like vomited booze. But anyway, so, yeah, as we're heading to the end here, the other thing I want to touch base on is, of course, the foreign community was feeling a little bit up in arms because the government had made some statements which blamed the foreign community for the rise in COVID numbers. Based on basically people not being able to understand what they should be doing to stay safe, right? The idea being that the foreign population can't speak Japanese well enough to understand the guidelines that are being put up by the government in hopes of slowing the spread of COVID. And so now they're talking about how there's going to be like some more, there's going to be like special things set up so that people can get information in their own language, which again is after the fucking fact. But two, it's also based on this assumption that that statement that it's foreigners who are to blame is true, right? And it's interesting because the numbers of foreign visitors, by the way, Visitors meaning people who, well, of course, tourists have declined greatly, right? The tourist numbers have declined greatly. And so, but even so, it's the foreigners coming into Japan who are to blame. And, you know, there's also the thing where, like, in the newspapers, people are still getting called visitors, even though they're actually residents who live here and pay taxes here, but, you know, whatever. That's the topic for another video. I'm a little bit bitter about that one. But also, one of the things I wanted to talk about, just to make sure we're being fair here, is that all of the stupidity here in Japan during COVID is not solely attributed to the Japanese government. Right? It also should be attributed, rightly so, to the foreign population. Right now, what I mean about this is I've been seeing a lot of talk recently about how dumb the Japanese are because of their response and that kind of thing, and it's specifically worded that way, right? It's not like, well, the government is not doing a good job, right? Which you could understand. It's I don't want to live in this country anymore. I'm so sick of the people, that kind of thing. And they go on to list about how there's nothing being done about COVID and that kind of thing. And I can understand, like, there are definitely individuals being irresponsible and stupid, not wearing masks, that kind of thing. But generally speaking, I think people, in my experience, are taking it very seriously. But the one thing that I have noticed is, in this attitude I'm talking about of sort of blaming a people when they should be blaming the government, right? And what I mean by this is that it is not always the case that the government and the people are the same. Right, you can make a much stronger argument for that case in a place like the States where, you know, right, a sizable chunk of the population, nearly half of the population, votes, for example, in the United States for Donald Trump, soon to be former President Donald Trump, right, where you know, almost half of the people vote for him. And then you can make an argument where there's a one-to-one comparison, perhaps. But it's not the case here, I think. And it's the same thing. I'm not equating Japan with China, but what I'm trying to make a point here is that, right, being raised in the States, I was raised in a way to think that China was the villain and that kind of thing. Right, and then you talk to people, right, actual Chinese people, and you come to realize, like, oh, yeah, the government and the people are two separate entities, right? And again, not always, but, you know, and it's the same thing here. So if you're pissed that the Japanese government is not taking adequate steps to kind of to curb the issue here, or if you're pissed that people are using go to travel and go to eat, consider the problem. The government is telling them it's okay to do so. Right? I'm not saying people are not being stupid. I'm just saying, you know, this, and a lot of times too, it's people who claim, it's people who are claiming othering and stuff like that, and racism, both of which exist, right? And xenophobia, all of those things exist. They're problems. I cannot speak, again, as I've said many times, I cannot speak to how bad they are because I'm a white American guy living in Japan, but they exist, they're problems. But it really, really irks me when the same people who complain about these things then turn around and make blanket, borderline racist statements about Japanese people. Right? It's like, okay, well, so it's okay if you do it, but not if it's done to you, kind of thing, right? And just as a little aside, a lot of times this is it's white women doing this kind of thing, and white dudes doing this kind of thing. Surprise, surprise. So anyhow, I suppose, in the words of probably my favorite YouTuber ever, don't be stupid, you know? And this is a message to the powers behind programs like Go to Travel and Go to Eat, and also people making blanket, stupid, racist statements about Japanese people because they're frustrated about the situation, because we're all fucking frustrated. And also, if you make statements like that, it's probably not just because you're frustrated. So anyway, let's finish our cuppa here. I'm having a problem recently where on the one cup of Japan, I don't finish the cuppa when the video ends. Ohayou gozaimasu. And when the wind blows, it is chilly. All right, let's get past these people. It's a holiday today, so people are out and driving about, getting ready to go places for the day, probably the park or something to that effect. Sumimasen. Right, so now let's finish our cuppa. Woo! Attractive face. All right, guys. Thanks always for watching. Of course, let me know your feelings about anything I just shared in this video, or anything at all. If you have some questions you'd like answered, you can please ask me on Twitter at @CHaywardJr. Get at me on Instagram at the same handle. Please check out my not my Instagram, my Patreon. And I'll see you guys all in the next video. Cheers.